The thing is, it is a playbook for how to get ahead in your career. If you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're gender non-binary, this book is absolutely packed with how do you get ahead when you have everything against you. We had a really interesting conversation.
We did. We were able to speak with Lareina Yee, one of the co-authors of The Broken Rung. Lareina is a senior partner at McKinsey and Company, and she advises companies on growth, technology, and transformation. She also co-founded the Women in the Workplace study with leanin.org. That's what made us reach out to her, as we were fascinated. We covered that a few months ago in New Week, New Headlines. And then obviously the Broken Rung book came out. And in that report, they're highlighting all of the challenges that women are facing in corporate America. Lareina also chairs McKinsey's Technology Council and hosts the podcast At the Edge, where she talks about technology trends. And then beyond her professional role, she's a mom of 3, and she serves on the board of San Francisco's ballet. But this was an awesome episode. She is talking about one of the earliest career barriers that women face, which is this broken rung, and ways that we can overcome it together. In this book, I think you and I both said it was covered cover to cover with yellow highlighter from all of the stats that we were reading.
Yeah, I ran out of highlighter while I was reading this book. The thing for me is we've had the glass ceiling. We know pay parity is not there yet and probably won't be for our lifetime. And what was so interesting was this early career issue that they have really nailed on. Even if you're not early career, even if you're not a woman, the thing about this book is it is a playbook for how to get ahead in your career. If you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're gender non-binary, this book is absolutely packed with how do you get ahead when you have everything against you. And it is a must read for anybody, especially in corporate America. We love talking with her. We focus a lot about women here, but I think it can apply to anybody.
One of the things that really stood out to me is this isn't just a playbook if you're in your early career. It's identifying when this starts, but it does give you information no matter where you are, whether you're just starting out, you're in the messy middle, or if you're like towards the end of and thinking about your next move. She gives you ways that you can think about how to level up. The other thing for me that was so interesting was the concept of if we were able to fix this broken rung at the start of a woman's career, then we could have parity in a generation versus 150 plus years. So that to me was super powerful. I'm just going to read a quote from the book Lareina mentioned was, "This is not just a women's issue, as you point out. It's an issue for our whole society and the global economy." So read the book, listen to the episode. Here's Lareina.
All right. Lareina, for those of us that haven't heard about this concept of the broken rung, I'm wondering if you can explain it to our listeners like a 5-year-old. What is the broken rung?
You start work, you landed the job, and you find that pretty much men and women pretty equal when you look around the room, right? 48% women entering the corporate pipeline in the United States, for example, similarly globally. But guess what? Time for the first promotion. And here's the rub. For every 100 men who have the odds of getting that promotion, only 81 women see those same odds of advancement. And that's the broken rung. That very first step on the career ladder is broken, and it comes up fast.
What was so interesting to me, so much of the time we're thinking about women advancement, we're thinking about it manager on up. Like, how do we get people to a C-suite or a VP? Because it's happening at this manager level. We're not getting people into these upper echelons. And I thought was so interesting about your research is that this is happening very early. And if you don't nail it early or don't look at it early, it has this kind of compounding effect on your career. What about that keeps you up at night?
All of it. By focusing on the broken rung, I wouldn't want to take attention away from the fact that people will call that middle layer, Francesca, like the messy middle, the frozen middle, that piece of it, or the glass ceiling. Let's be clear, that still exists. And whilst we've made progress in corporate America, as an example, when I founded Women in the Workplace, we were 19% women reporting to CEOs at the C-suite. Now we're at 29%. So we're really close to 30. So that's great. But we're all really good at math. That's not parity. That's not 50%. That doesn't represent the population. So we've got challenges across the whole talent pipeline or ladder, however you want to visualize it. I think the challenge with the middle, though, the math is that you've already lost a lot of women, or they've gotten stuck, or they're stalled. It's not entirely clear exactly what happens to all those women because some of them don't leave the workforce altogether, but let's just say largely stalled and stuck. So you are already in the middle dealing with probably something around 37% women. So you're already dealing with a smaller population, trying to put it in slates. So you're just so many steps behind. And I do think to the early Broken Rung, I do think it catches women by surprise. And it may even happen and they didn't even realize it because it's not like an exam where they publish the results. You don't know where you are on the curve. And it may have been a delay by a year, 6 months, 2 years, or maybe you decided to go somewhere else. And so some of these types of things may not be completely perceptible. But I think when you talk to women over the course of 20, 30 years in work and they think back, they're like, huh. And when we look at the data year over year, it shows that same phenomenon. Maybe it's 84 women, maybe it's 81, maybe 79. It's bouncing around a little bit, but it's nowhere near parity.
Yeah. I want to dive into that. Why that first promotion? Why is that so critical for people to really focus on?
There are a lot of things. One, if you just think of a merit-based view, you want to actually be rewarded for the work you do. Yeah. So there's a simple thing. There's also financially, you're not just working to work for the benefit of society. And you may feel very mission oriented, you may feel very purpose filled, and you may feel incredible pride for what you do, but you're also there for your economic earnings. Yeah. And to earn less through differences in promotion is another type of tax on top of a general phenomenon we see in terms of a wage disparity between women and men. It's another form. But the other thing is, let's just think about a talented woman who, by and large, women graduate at higher rates than men for undergraduate degrees, and by and large with higher GPAs. And so you've got a talented woman, she's doing all the right things and missing maybe by a year, maybe 2 or 3 years, that first promotion is missing her ability to reach her full professional potential. And careers in life are long. And those delays have almost compound effects over time. Yeah. And we haven't even hit motherhood yet.
This is the thing that I read in the book, the idea of like a motherhood tax, where, and we'll talk about it a little bit longer, but for every kid that someone has, they get taxed more and more. Their fathers get a bonus for having kids. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
We've all been in the meeting where the mom is rushing to go to the soccer game and everyone's saying, oh, okay, fine. Maybe even non-event, not even like eyebrow raising. And then the guy is, I've got to go. Same thing. I've got to go. I've got to get to the soccer game at 4:30. And people are like, high five. You're amazing. And by the way, do I think it's amazing that dad is leaving for the soccer game? 100%. I'm just saying that I equally think it's a high five moment for the woman to leave as well.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you get the eye roll for the woman. Oh, gotta go again. And then for the guy, it's good for you. You're such a good dad.
Yeah, you're a leader. You're a leader.
I want to talk about experience capital. That was one of my favorite parts of the book because I agree it's totally needed. But can you share with our listeners, what is experience capital? What's that concept?
So the punchline is 50% of your lifetime earnings come from what you gain on the job. And the reason this is important is you look at many women. And as I mentioned earlier, women outperform in school. They graduate at higher rates, particularly in the United States, and oftentimes they're graduating with higher GPAs. And so they have done the first part really well. But when we just look at representation, never mind how the experience feels, which we have a lot of data on as well, it's women are not succeeding to their potential in the workplace, at least if you look at representation, right? And so the idea of experience capital is, if you were really great at school, how do you apply what helped you be wonderful at school to managing intentionally your portfolio of experiences that drive both the economic outcomes for you, your livelihood, but also your professional opportunities. And so you think about choosing your major, choosing your classes, getting an A. How do you be purposeful in making those decisions, in accumulating the experiences that matter? Not just the job in front of you, which certainly is important, but what is the accumulation of experience over time? And can you get it earlier? Because it pays to get it earlier, often, and bigger. Can you do that in a way that sets you up really well for a lifetime of work?
One of the things that you called out that I really loved too was, as part of gaining that experience capital, was making sure you gain some of that experience capital on like the P&L side of the house, and like really being deep into the business. So for anyone listening, P&L, profit and loss, that's one example. But what are some of those examples of like business side?
Yeah.
So say I have a very strong HR background, by the way, but to be in strategic HR, I had to get that experience pretty early. So how can folks who aren't traditionally like on that business side, how can they gain that very important business experience capital? And what does that mean? How is it different when you think about the experience capital you do gain? How does that differently set them up financially down the road?
Sure. Well, let's take your career as an example, and I might be getting parts of that wrong, but you have a passion for HR, and a lot of women will connect with work to where they feel purpose, where they feel talent. And being an aspiring CHRO and being a leader in talent, is that amazing? 100%.
Yeah.
But, and having experience in what we call the power alley, which is a P&L role, maybe sales, maybe product, maybe in a business unit, that experience is essential for you to be even better as an HR leader and a talent leader. And so it's not to say that everyone should be the business unit leader or the GM, but it is to say that having that experience, short, long, at some point, will make you better at whatever you want to do. The other thing is, if you aspire to be a CEO, to the chip tracker idea, the pink chip, one year we looked at it, 95% of the CEOs that year we looked at it all came from P&L. So like virtually impossible, very unlikely that if you haven't had P&L experience and you realize, understandably, halfway through your career that you aspire to be a CEO, this is going to be an essential part. So that's one experience. Another piece of experience capital is entrepreneurship. And people think that's just being a founder. And yes, that's amazing. Both of you have founded this. That's entrepreneurship. But I bet both of you also were entrepreneurs in the companies that you were in before. And it's a huge skill that makes a difference. How do you take initiative? How do you lead? How do you invent? Versus here's the thing that I was given and I've checked all the boxes. So entrepreneurship is a huge piece. The other thing that we talk about is skill differentiation. We call that bold moves. And so if you look at one job to a next job, and it could be within the same company, right? It's you're doing different roles. Bold moves are where you do a 25% or more skill difference between your former job and your new job. And women who take 2, 3 big, bold moves over their career have outsized impact, both economically as well as their ability to progress. So there are more, but just maybe to pause, take a deep breath. There are a lot of things we can do that are super concrete that help us build experience capital. And if you're young in your career, gosh, you got to build that early and often. And if you're a little older in your career, me or like middle age, think about the experience capital you need to maybe pivot or do something new or to expand even more opportunities. It's a huge piece.
I appreciate that, because I think a lot of folks forget that you can have an entrepreneurial spirit while you're in an organization. It's like looking for those project opportunities where you can gain that skill set. For somebody who might be more of an introvert, I'm an ambivert, right? So it takes a lot of effort to reach out for those experiences and that sort of thing. Maybe they don't have a flashy or visible role. What's a way that they can start to advocate for themselves to begin to build that experience capital?
I think, first of all, you've got to play to your strengths. So you may see someone who's an extrovert, very charismatic, maybe an athlete. So she happens to play golf, which tends to be helpful in a male world. And not in all cases. She's out on the golf course and you're just like, that's not me. And first of all, good for her. She should go with all those strengths, right? But you're like, how do I meet other people if I'm different? So I think there's one thing, which is to know yourself and build off your strengths. I remember early in my career, being in consulting, my strength was the data and the analysis that I was doing. And part of the credibility was really just the work itself. But the work is a basis to have a conversation with others and a basis to build trust. And then you start maybe building a relationship. And entrepreneurship is following up. I remember meeting just this amazing executive. And I was like, you're just so, like, you're a role model. And I didn't say that, but then I remember just keeping in touch with her over time. Not a ton. I was, whatever, maybe 10 levels more junior to her. But I remember when I was leaving Asia, moving back to the US, she was the last person that I had kind of coffee with who was a client before I left. You've got to do it in your own style, but I think you do need to be purposeful. And for those who are analytic, write it down. Write down, who do you work with, who you have a connection and network with, who have you worked with before that you could rekindle if you're kind of customer or client facing, or if you're supply chain facing, who's outside of your organization, and also maybe people from school. Or so how do you think about building those networks? And just make sure that we know that women tend to have more narrow, more junior networks. Just make sure that over time, it's not going to happen overnight, but over time you invest in building some more senior networks. I know one guy that I talked to joined this nonprofit board, and I invested my personal time, and I spent time and had lunch with every single board member, all of which were at least a decade more advanced in their career than me. And I built this local network. And he said, so when you join a board, you join a nonprofit board, this is what you should do. And I was like, I didn't even think about that. I'm so busy just trying to get through my day. It didn't occur to me to like schedule lunch with each person on the board, get to know them, build a relationship. And it was true. I looked at the list and I was like, I am the most junior person from a professional person on this board. So there are lots of ways you can do it.
Yeah. I think it's, finding your little avenue is going to be the most important, what works for you. I think folks sometimes can equate being outgoing as the folks who get the opportunity, but you don't have to fit that niche to get the same kind of experience capital you're talking about.
And some really senior people are quite introverted themselves.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
You find a connection.
Yeah, you'll find some kinship in that for sure. I wanted to talk about the sponsorship versus mentorship because something that really stood out to me in the Women in the Workplace report was that women are overly mentored and we're under sponsored significantly. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So one thing is maybe just to define the difference, because sometimes I just feel like we don't have the facts to make the decision. So mentorship is, Francesca, you're my mentor. I identify with you. You go to coffee if I have a bad day or something didn't happen quite right on a project. You empathize and you give me some suggestions on how to think about it. But Mel, if you're my sponsor, you do everything Francesca does, but you also open windows and doors for me. And that may be as explicit as you are actually putting me up for promotion, but it could be more everyday actions. Like, Mel, you say, Lareina, I know you've been working really hard on this. Why don't you come to the meeting? And why don't you present? And I remember there's this really amazing sponsor. We do a sponsor award at McKinsey. And one of the winners there's this story that he faked a bloody nose because he knew that the client was like wanted him to be there. He faked a bloody nose and he's, I'm sorry, I have to go, so that the woman partner who was up for senior partner would present, but also be seen as like super senior. It's like he was an actor. Everybody thought he had a bloody nose. He had a medical reason to leave, but no bloody nose. He actually was just creating truly an opportunity for her to shine. By the way, she became one of the co-leaders of the client, and all these great things happened. You can do that on a Tuesday at 4, on a Friday at 9. These are not hard things. And so when you think about, and if you're senior and you're listening to this, how do you open doors and windows for others? But it can be very subtle things that help. And it can be really being there in the moment to say, this person should be on the slate and really helping you get promoted, or keeping in touch with you and offering you an opportunity somewhere else. Women are just under-sponsored. And maybe also it's not as clear how to develop sponsor relationships. But I think it's like women, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. If you realize this is something that's as important as delivering your quota or whatever your MBOs are or OKRs, and you think about it as something you do a little bit every quarter, over time, you'll have a really powerful senior network.
Something that stood out to me in the book was, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was essentially the biggest issue with this broken rung is once the first rung is broken, it just has this compounding sort of domino effect, right? Because now there's less women at each stage to continue to sponsor other women up. But men can be sponsors too, not trying to leave them out of the conversation, right? And the other powerful thing that you said in the book was that if we can repair this first rung, it'll help us repair all of the subsequent rungs, which could help us really fix this issue or bring parity within a generation, which is huge because that within one generation is 10 years versus 150 years. But how important is sponsorship, or what level of does sponsorship play in the importance of fixing that first rung?
All of the above. So if 70% of the C-suite are men, then it's really important that men are sponsors in your network. It's that simple. And also, it's really that simple. If we go from 48% women at the starting gate, and then we drop down in the middle, and the VP layers down to 38, et cetera, et cetera. And at the top, for the SVP layers and the C-suite, we are at 29%. So it's just almost like a math thing, because you just have fewer women in the talent pool overall. So if I were to say I'd like to see equal men and women on the slate, that's actually something that is a little hard to accomplish, because you actually have maybe a third, maybe 40% each level, you have fewer women. And so I think sometimes what we talk about for companies that are trying to work on this is, you have a funnel, you need to have a pipe. So a really healthy company starts with a percentage of women, and you would have that same percentage mirrored across all the talent levels. That would be really healthy. Many years ago, I met a tech company who was like, it's just so hard, et cetera, et cetera. The classic, we don't have engineers. But one thing we told them that really surprised them, I said, you have a beginning funnel problem. Yeah, you're at something, I think they were at maybe 37% women at the entry. So that's not good. But interestingly enough, they had that pipe. I said, so you're doing something right really well, which most of your peers are not, which is you're able to retain them. You do have a bit of a drop off at the top, but that's really amazing. So for you, if you actually could fix the entry level, you clearly have a culture that supports women in a very natural way. You are in like great shape. And they were like, gosh, I thought we were going to have this meeting. You're going to give me an awful report card. And I said, yeah, I mean, you're starting out ranks not so good, but actually there's some really good stuff there for companies that want to change. You have to just take a look at your data and say, just as you would any kind of business problem, where would be the 2 or 3 most important interventions where if I fix this, it would really change in one generation? And I think for companies who are very determined to do it, it's possible.
It's interesting too. Speaking of what companies can do, because you mentioned McKinsey has their sponsorship award, which I love to hear. And we've worked in talent forever. So you always hear about the mentorship program, but rarely do I hear about a formal sponsorship program. What have you seen work really well in terms of programs that support the sponsorship for this kind of success?
I think a couple things. It's important to say that whilst women tend to feel over-mentored, under-sponsored, there are men who also feel this way if you de-average it.
Yeah.
Maybe the men who don't have the classic archetypical attributes, or men of color. So there can be, when you de-average, lots of people need this. So a couple of things. One is going from a spiritual agreement that sponsorship is a good idea to actually creating a program. So program means that you actually define mentorship sponsorship. Program means that you actually track the data. For some, you may actually hold them accountable, not like a quota, like you have to have X number of sponsorees or mentors, but as part of how you think of good leadership, as part of the equation. If you have the data, if you have the qualitative, and what you value gets measured in some way. So I'm not suggesting like a 1-for-1, you only get promoted if you're a sponsor. We all know that, and you all both know very well, like when you think about leadership, there's a way that kind of goes into your reviews and potentially your compensation, your feedback, how you're viewed. I think you build it in.
Yeah.
You build it in 100%. And then you may have some programs that kind of activate it. But I think you really commit to a culture of sponsorship, which the insane thing to me is it helps. It's like your classic all boats rise.
Yeah.
Everyone benefits. Everyone. And
Yeah.
if there are women, as the human population will have, who are not good sponsors, it's good. They will, as leaders, learn to be good sponsors. Men will learn to be good sponsors. And sometimes for men, and I've seen this, when they see their data and they realize like they don't have a single woman that they sponsor, they will auto-correct that themselves. It's not like they woke up and said, how can I not have any women as sponsors?
Yeah.
Sometimes data is like an incredible amount of sunlight for people to do the right thing.
I want to talk about motherhood and navigating career transitions with motherhood. You mentioned in the book that motherhood could actually be a boost to your career, and it's not something we typically hear. Can you talk a little bit more about how it can boost your career?
Yeah. So that's not an easy thing. In the chapter, we do really spend a bit of time on Claudia Goldman's Nobel Prize economist. We do want to make sure that a lot of the research that she's done gets proper understanding in terms of biases towards women, in terms of a motherhood penalty and all of those things. With that said, like it is hard. I think part of it was squeezing out and looking at stories where women can succeed in spite of it. And for me, also a little bit of a search for the urban legend to see if it's true. So one of the stories that you saw was a woman. The phrase that I've always used is make sure you pack a round trip ticket, not just to leave, to go on parental leave, but also to come back and to come back with intention. Part of that would be building your network and thinking about your skills, moderating your time, all these types of things. And one of the stories in the book is a woman who was a rising star lawyer. As she had her first kid, she made the decision to actually be a full-time mom. She's an amazing mom, raised 3 boys. 14 years into that, she exercised her round trip ticket. She went back and she did a reboarding program. Some companies, not all, offer this, but LinkedIn offered it. She got back into the workforce and is a rising star lawyer at LinkedIn. And I just think this concept that we measure it in very 0-1 ways. Okay, I had the baby. I'm having the baby. I take my paid maternity or parental leave. I come back. I think there are variations to make that work for you. So that's one story that I was very inspired by. The other thing is would you use the policies as ingredients to bake your own cake? Would you say, look, in my company, there's the parental leave, and I see a lot of mostly dual career couples. We see a lot more of women and men under 40 are dual career, whereas like baby boomers tend to be more like a single person leading the household. Let's use the woman and the partner's parental leave to maximize it. How do we go slow, go fast across that portfolio? Like really sharing with your partner the chutes and ladders of a career. We see also like how do you use some of the part-time, how to use rotations to kickstart your next bold move. Like maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to do the thing that I really know how to do in an excellent way, and I'm going to do it at 80%. But then actually, when my littlest one is in school, hits 3, I'm going to take a bold move and I'm going to do this. Or by the way, I'm going to actually invest in a bunch of technology skills and pilots and things because I'm going to make a bold move. And these are just like excessive examples, but how do you apply really intentional thinking to that time as opposed to, gosh, this is just the discount time?
Yeah.
And also back to the network point, I think, and I don't think this is as much in the book, but I think having a peer network when you're a young mom, at least for me personally, I see you nodding, being able to call someone who was working full time, who had kids under 10 like me, and just to say, I've had the hardest week. In that time, I didn't need a sponsor. I didn't need a mentor. I just needed a friend to say, yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I remember this is a little bit maybe TMI, but I always go there. Is I remember I was at the point where I was breastfeeding and I was still working and shipping my milk back. Deloitte was really great about that, like freezing it and shipping it back home, which is amazing and lovely. But I remember just feeling touched out, vultured because I was getting it at work. And I was literally having the call with her while my pump was going. And I felt totally okay with it. But she knew both of my lives. And you really do need that feeling of someone gets you.
A little grace. Like, I think you have to set the pace of your own career versus expect others. And both of you have done that in your careers. But there may be times where you're like, I'm going 60 miles an hour. And by the way, I've structured it and my expectations are that. And then there are times I'm doubling down and going super fast and I'm going to do a bold move and a this and a that. And so I don't think it's a linear climb. And actually, when we look at men who are very successful, underneath it, it wasn't. So I think we try, sometimes perfection can be the enemy of progress, like that phrase, and maybe redefine what perfection is at certain moments of your career. I took a really long first parental leave, and I was really fortunate to be in a dual career situation, so I could afford to, but I was really young. I wasn't even 30 yet. And I just wanted to learn how to be a mom for a while. I wanted to take 9 months off. And at that time, paid leave was not 6 weeks, single digits or something like that. That's also betting on yourself and taking a risk. It's saying, I'm confident that when I'm ready to go back, that job will be there. And I may have missed something, but I actually, as a gift, not just to my child, but also to myself, would like to learn how to be a mom for a bit and enjoy it.
The beautiful thing about the book, though, is it does give you the playbook for if you're going to make those choices, which are totally great to make, that there are other moves you can make that won't make that choice just like a lifelong decision too, right? I feel like this idea of these are your options. These are the ways you can put it in 6th gear, pull it down to 3rd gear, make a right turn, make a left turn, and create a beautiful career for yourself and a great life too. Because I feel like, I'm not saying you can balance everything all the time and have everything you want, but you can sure as hell be way more intentional about it and get to where you want to go in a way that maybe was linear, to your point.
And some of those basics matter. I remember we talk about negotiation. People always think negotiation is just your pay. By the way, women tend not to negotiate. So pro tip, do negotiate. But But negotiation is, right, hot tip, but negotiation's also other types of things. So I remember, because we didn't have, at the time, this was 22 years ago, we didn't have the type of programs that, and I was actually not even in the United States. And so I remember talking to the office manager and saying, look, I know that this isn't the typical thing, but I'd really like to take 9 months, maybe more off. But I actually am super committed to coming back, and I will stay in touch. And when I came back, they were like, that's hard in consulting and you're flying out. And I said, look, just for my first thing back, for my first month, can you just help me do something local so that I just don't get straight on an airplane? And whatever that is, I'll do it. Like any industry, any team, like, but that would be such a gift. And that's part of negotiating how you come back. And he said, got it, let's do that. Turns out, to the entrepreneurship, we were working on something that became a huge local client. And because I worked on it and worked really hard with all these other folks, some of which I didn't know already, we actually had all these I had a year where I didn't get on an airplane. And part of it is a little bit of luck, a little bit of negotiating, asking. That's a positive negotiation. I will work really hard, but could you help me not reduce travel just for a little bit? And then we'll sort it out. Just give me a sec to rebase. I'm still the person that you loved and valued before. I didn't think at the time it takes courage to do that, but it does take some courage to have that conversation. And you do need to work in an environment where that conversation would be received well.
Sure.
Not to make too much of the example, but I do think in the book, there are all these women who make it work in spite of. And so there's a lot of data, Mel, as you mentioned, but for me, I think the stories are just really inspirational about what are the tactical things they did to get from A to B.
Yeah, a lot of great moves. I think it's required reading, quite honestly, to think about how do you really own your career and own your career as a woman. You got to read it. You got to read it.
Keeping it simple for our listeners, especially those who might be like, am I already part of the broken rung? Do I need to address this? What's one thing they can do next week to get back on track?
Reframe. You're not off track. You are always on track. And there's always opportunity in front of you. And betting on yourself is always a good bet. So look ahead. And what's your next move? Do you want to go to the power alley? Do you want to exercise entrepreneurship? Do you want to build in the skills that matter for the future? The 12 million occupations that we know will shift by 2030. Do you want to increase your network? Pick one. Pick one. Yeah. Just pick one and get started.
Yeah. I love that. I love that concept that you're never off track.
You're never off track.
Yeah. We're just all taking fun side quests to get on the journey.
You realize how much you have already.
Yeah.
Your portfolio just may look a little different than that guy next door to you. And that's okay. Really, what are you good at? What do you have? Where does that point you? And then start opening the windows and doors yourself. Go get people to help you.
Yeah. I love it.
You can do it.
What about leaders? If you're a leader leading a team and this is information, maybe it's new information for somebody listening today. What's something that they can take away or start to do to analyze and make sure that they're being a good sponsor, or they're recognizing that they might be holding people back? How can they support not holding them back or pushing them forward?
The first thing is to maybe just mark a couple of, like, a piece of data or story that honestly struck you very authentically. It doesn't need to be many, just one or two. And I would go share that with a man and a woman on your team and just say, I was reading this and stopped me in my tracks. What do you think? Do you think we have a fair workplace? Do you feel the opportunities are the same? And the man might say, I feel over-mentored, under-sponsored. You're like, that's good feedback. But like, pro tip, does any of this resonate with you?
Yeah.
I just start with that. Just start locally in your own community and neighborhood.
starting the conversation. Let's just have the conversation.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, a leader can de-risk what feel like high stakes conversations, and opening to have the conversation, to listen, to learn is huge. There's a story of a woman who was in the creative arts. She was in performing arts in New York, and she had an underlying mindset that if you are creative, it's okay to be disorganized, because that kind of comes with being creative. And she didn't even know that this was an underlying mindset, but she was super disorganized. And she had her baby a couple months old. And for women who remember or who have had babies in that early stage, there's very few windows. If you live in New York City, you can get that baby outside and take the baby for a walk before the baby needs to eat and nap. And so she missed the whole window because she was so disorganized. She's like, oh my God, where's the diapers? Where's the this? Where's that? Blah, blah, blah. She missed the window, and then the baby's crying. And she describes, and I've talked to her about this also personally, she describes looking at this wonderful child's face and saying, kiddo, this isn't going to work. So not only that's a point of deep failure. Like, I think for me, I'm like, oh my God, I would have been in a ball in tears. And like, that just sounds awful. And we've all been there. Like, Anyway, the reason I mention this is because it's a very relatable moment. But from that moment, not only does she become really good at organizing, she builds a business to organize other executives, both men and women. She writes 2 New York Times bestseller books or more. And she has this whole career where she actually helps people with their operating models, with their leadership. But it starts with the wedge of what was a point of failure became a point of strength, became a point of building a business, became a point of giving to others and helping others not organize how they get their walks for their babies, but like thinking about how the softer skills help you be a better leader, the full set of softer skills. And she's no longer in performing arts. She's in corporate America. And I also just wanted to share that sometimes both men and women are so afraid to make a mistake. And there's a lot in the zeitgeist about that. But I do think you never know. Like, how do you take that in as a pivot point to something else?
Lareina, I'm going to start with some high-level questions. They can be one-word responses or 1 sentence, 2 sentences, whatever you feel most confident with. But the whole point is just to get your immediate reaction to the question. Okay. Ready to dive in?
Ready.
Okay. It's 2030. What's work going to look like?
It will be AI powered.
Okay. What's one thing about corporate culture you'd like to see disappear for good?
Bias.
Thank you. What's the greatest opportunity that most organizations are missing out on right now?
Women. Young women.
Even better answer. What music are you listening to right now?
Oh, I really like Bruno Mars and his collaborations.
Yeah.
Many of which are women artists, but I do really love the collaborations.
I like his new stuff too. It's like fun. Yeah, so good.
And
What are you?
global.
Yeah. What are you reading? And that could be physically reading or listening to an audiobook right now.
I am obsessed with AI podcasts. So yeah.
What's your favorite AI podcast? What do you recommend?
Oh, I really like No Priors.
Oh.
And like Training Data from Sequoia and the Possible podcast with Reid Hoffman. Yeah. And of course, I think everyone in tech listens to Hard Fork. I'd be remiss not to mention Hard Fork, but that's kind of obvious.
Love them.
Perfect. Who do you really admire?
The 11% women CEOs of the world, each and every one of them.
Yeah.
For everything that they're doing and for being a pioneer.
Awesome. We recommend all the time on this podcast that people start to follow. I'm sure you do, but the organization Pink Chip, that's tracking all of the global female CEOs and their success. So
yeah,
any chance I can to plug it, I like to bring it back up.
Good plug.
Yeah. What's a piece of advice you want everyone to know?
Build your networks. Make sure they're powerful networks and people who are going to be your personal board of directors.
Oh, I love that. All right. Last thing, where can listeners follow you, stay abreast of all of the goodness and new research that you have coming out on this topic, what's the best? Obviously, read the book. We're going to link to that. But how can they continue to stay informed beyond reading the book?
All of our gender and research on McKinsey.com. You can search under my name or just search under the topics. We have 10 years of women in the workplace, so there's a lot of data in there. And I'm on LinkedIn. And I've been trying to be better at posting thoughts and sharing things that are interesting. You all can be can give me the feedback. You're like, nah, it's not really working, but it'd be good if you were more. But I'm focused on LinkedIn.
This has been so lovely, Lareina. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you both.
Appreciate you. This episode was produced, edited, and all things by us, myself, Mel Plutt, and Francesca Ranieri. Our music is by Pink Zebra. And if you loved this conversation and you want to contribute your thoughts with us, please do. You can visit us at yourworkfriends.com, but you can also join us over on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn community page, and we have the TikToks and Instagram. So please join us in the socials. And if you like this and you've benefited from this episode and you think someone else can benefit from this episode, please rate and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. That helps keep us going.
Take care, friends.
Right. Bye, friends.
Bye, friend.